A lot of people are wondering these days whether it's possible to put the word Islam in the same sentence as democracy and human rights. And to tell you the truth, there are not that many examples to be optimistic about. Even in a country like Turkey, where they have a guarantee of the separation of church and state, they are still moving towards an Islamic theocracy. Nevertheless, there is one country that is escaping this trend, and that country is Tunisia. With approximately 10 million inhabitants, Tunisia is the cradle of the so-called Arab Spring. You know, that phenomena that started in the winter of 2011. Anyway, this is where everything started. More specifically, things started in the city of Sidi Bouzid. Things kicked off when a 26-year-old fruit seller burned himself to death as a form of protest in front of a government building. This is how a revolution spread all across northern Africa. And from here, you probably do know the rest of the story. In Egypt, they overthrew their dictator only for him to be replaced by a man who is probably even worse. Libya is a failed state that has a high probability of becoming a radical Islamic country. And, well, let's just say it's probably best that we don't talk about Syria. Among all of this madness, though, Tunisia is an exception. After ousting their dictator ABIDINE Ben Ali, Tunisians wrote a brand new constitution which was inspired by French law. This new text allows freedom of speech and freedom of religion. But not only that, now 20% of the country's parliamentary seats are occupied by women. This is a very big achievement if you consider Tunisia to any other Islamic country. This is why Tunisia has become one of the main targets of Daesh. So far, more than 73 people have died in 3 separate terrorist attacks. And this is what leads us to many questions. Can Tunisian liberal democracy survive in such a harsh environment? Can Tunisia become a model for neighboring countries? Will the European Union help or damage this democracy? Well, today we are going to answer all of these questions for you, but first we need to look a bit at the history of Tunisia.
Lights and Shadows of Abidine Ben Ali.
In 1955, Tunisia got its independence from France. Just like other countries in the region, the Republic of Tunisia followed the so-called Arab socialism or Pan-Arabism. This was an ideological cocktail that mixed authoritarianism, charismatic leaders, a centralized economy, and finally a secular state. You might even say it's an anti-religious state. This ideology became very fashionable in the area that brought us tyrants such as Gaddafi in Libya and Nasser in Egypt. In the Tunisian case, the man is the man you are seeing on the screen now. His name was Habib Bourguiba. In summary, his government was famous for its corruption, clientelism, and its systematic devaluations of the national currency, the dinar. It's really no wonder that the economy eventually collapsed. And so, what was the outcome? Well, in 1987, President Bourguiba was at the hospital recovering from a heart attack. It was at this point that his prime minister, Abidine Ben Ali, took his seat. Tunisians called this event the medical coup d'etat. No blood was spilled, actually there was no violence whatsoever. Even when Bourguiba left the hospital, Ben Ali sent him to a luxury mansion with a team of doctors and nurses to take care of him. Legend even says that he went to visit the man often. So you can say that this was a coup d'etat, but you can say that it was one with a lot of love and care. So what did Ben Ali do? Well, during his mandate, he said that he would bring democracy to Tunisia. And while he did call for elections several times, the problem was that in order to run in the elections, you needed the approval of 30 people from the existing government party. This means that in most of the cases, well, surprise, surprise, the only eligible candidate was one from the government's party. Thanks to all of this, Ben Ali held power for 23 years. 23 years that of course continued the tradition of corruption that the Tunisian people had grown used to. But now there is something positive we should say about Mr. Ben Ali, and that is his economic pragmatism. From the start of his rule, he encouraged foreign investment, and this encouraged a lot of foreign companies to establish themselves in Tunisia. This is how several hotel chains started up in the country, attracted by the great weather. This led to tourism becoming Tunisia's main industry, followed by the olive industry. And don't forget the latter of those, because we're going to be coming back to it shortly. So during those 20 years, Tunisians actually managed to multiply their income by 3. In fact, in 2010, Tunisia boasted over 6 million tourists. This is about half the number who visited neighboring Egypt. But do keep in mind here that Egypt has, well, the pyramids and also a population 9 times the size of Tunisia. Pay close attention to the numbers here. Tunisia has a population of 10 million people, and in a single year, they hosted 6 million tourists. So why am I emphasizing this quite so much? Well, that's because tourists are much more than an influx of money for the country. They also bring with them another culture. Suddenly, in a country which is majority Islam, it becomes normal for people to see women walking around without scarves on their heads, for homosexual people to be seen kissing in the streets, and for people to be drinking alcohol. There is no other Islamic country that is quite so exposed to this level of Western culture. So if you are one of those British people who got drunk in a Tunisian hotel, well, know that you're doing your part for Tunisia's cultural diversity. Well, thanks to this wider cultural exposure, something quite extraordinary happened.
The democratic transition in Tunisia.
In 2010, the Tunisian economy was on fire, but their unemployment rate was 12%. Added to this were corruption scandals and power abuses under Ben Ali's regime. Now, all of these things were of course hidden from the people in the local press, but due to the large amount of tourists, a lot of foreign media was being brought into the country, and this educated the people. Now, all of these things would never be published in the local press, but the foreign media, they were reporting everything. And in a country with so much tourism, what is written outside can very easily be read inside. So people knew what was going on, and they really didn't like it. This led to demonstrations being organized in several cities. Perhaps these protests wouldn't have been so big if it wasn't for Mohamed Bouazizi. He was a 26-year-old man who burned himself to death in protest after police took over his street shop. This is how the Jasmine Revolution started. All of a sudden, thousands of protesters gathered in every Tunisian city. Now, unlike other dictators, Ben Ali didn't confront them, he simply left Tunisia.
Ben Ali quits after 23 years in power and leaves Tunisia.
After this momentous occasion, the president of the Parliament of Tunisia formed a provisional government and freed over 500 political prisoners. Not only that, but some Tunisian dissidents who were living in exile came back to the country. Among them was this man, Monsef Marzouki. He was the president of the Arab Commission on Human Rights.
The question you might wonder now is whether the Tunisia we are talking is Islamic, and the answer is no. The Tunisia we're talking is democratic.
So a year after Bouazizi burned himself to death, Tunisia was holding their first free elections. And our friend Marzouki would become the first president. So what exactly was the problem? Well, the president was from the Islamist party. We are talking about the Ennahda movement, the Tunisian and perhaps more moderate version of the Islamic Brotherhood. In a time when over 100 political parties appeared, Ennahda was the only one with an efficient structure. This is why the party won the majority of the seats in the Tunisian parliament. This is particularly problematic if we take into account that this was the party that was going to be responsible for crafting the new Tunisian constitution. So you might be wondering after this, how is it that the Tunisian constitution remains so secular? Well, here's the story. After so much political uncertainty, the hardcore Islamists created the so-called Islamic Leagues. These, of course, supported the ruling party in order to speed up the Islamification of the country. This led to violence on the streets, and even worse.
Tunisia shocked by assassinations. Opposition leaders Mohamed Brahmi and Chokri.
Meanwhile, the income from tourism was falling sharply. No one wants to travel to a dangerous country, and this generated more and more social unrest. With this situation, the secular parties created a common front against Ennahda. And this is how the Islamist bloc was forced to have secular politicians in their cabinet. Months later, both the Islamist Leagues and the Muslim Brotherhood were considered terrorist organizations by the Tunisian government. And of course, the most extreme extreme politicians had to leave the government as well. Actually, in some months, the whole Ennahda movement left the cabinet and left the decision-making power in the hands of the secular parties. They did this with just one condition, and that is that Islam must remain the official religion in the new constitution. So what was the result of all of this? Well, the new Tunisian constitution is not based on Sharia law, and it includes both freedom of religion and freedom of speech. But not only that, it also guarantees a non-religious education. Islam now holds only a symbolic position in Tunisia. The reality is that when it comes to politics, Tunisia is a secular nation. New free media organizations were then formed, and what followed this was the creation of one of the strongest civil societies in the whole of North Africa. After this, it is no surprise that during the elections in 2014, Islamist parties lost to the secular liberal coalition. Now, if you still don't believe me about the influence of tourism in Tunisia, well, have a look at this electoral map. On this map, you can see how the Islamists lost in the regions that are closer to the coast. And this is because that's where all the hotels and resorts are. But hold on a second, because things are about to get a little grimmer.
Who is threatening Tunisian democracy?
Months after Tunisia published their constitution, Daesh, or the Islamic State, organized their first terrorist attack against the El Bardo Museum. This is one of the main tourist attractions in the country.
As a result, the number of British arrivals, which looked set to break records in the early months of 2015, has fallen by 93.2% for the first 5 months of this year.
After this, 2 attacks followed, and in total 73 people were left dead. This is why the Tunisian government has a security crisis as well as an economic crisis. And one of them is destroying their main industry, which is why stories like this one are quite so important.
Tunisia to offer $50 billion of projects to foreign investors.
Not only that, but the European Union has also eliminated all fares on the import of Tunisian olive oil. As you know, in the European Union, agriculture is protected from foreign markets. But in the case of Tunisia, it is essential in order to support their olive industry. As I said before, it is the second largest industry in the country behind tourism. But hold on for a moment, because as you can probably imagine, this didn't make the European farmers too happy, especially those ones based in Italy.
Let's save our quality. Say no to Tunisian oil.
Well, this is especially funny given that most of that oil that is labeled as made in Italy is actually produced in Tunisia and then shipped to Italy where it is labeled. And this is where the political battle starts in Europe. On the one hand, it is crucial to help the Tunisian economy so they can maintain their democracy, but on the other hand, a lot of European countries don't want to lose their privileges. So the question is, do you think Europe should open its market to Tunisia? Do you think that it is an important sacrifice to make in order to prevent political unrest in the country? And do you think Tunisia could become a model for neighboring countries? Well, do let us know. That's what the comment section below is useful for. And of course, do not forget that we upload brand new videos like this every Monday and every Thursday, so do hit that subscribe button that is on the screen as well as below the video to be sure that you are notified about those videos. And also, if you enjoyed this video, please do give us a thumbs up, and as always, I'll see you in the next video.